You know what's funny about disasters? Everyone thinks they know what people steal first. Ask around and you'll hear the same answers on repeat: TVs, jewelry, cash, maybe some fancy electronics. But listen, those aren't the things people rip off the shelves when society actually falls apart. Those are the things people steal when the world is still basically functioning. When the power is on, the police are bored, and the biggest threat is getting caught on a security camera. But once the grid is dead, once communication fails, once people realize nobody's coming to stop them, the shopping list changes, and it changes fast. So what looters really go for in the first hours of a real collapse isn't glamorous, it's primal. It's the things people don't notice until they're gone. The things that decide whether someone feels vulnerable or in control. And the weird part, most preppers overlook these same items even while stocking bunkers and bragging about fire starters they've never actually used. So let me walk you straight into the uncomfortable truth, because once you understand what looters take first, you understand what panic does to the human brain. The first thing people strip bare isn't food. Like everyone assumes it's water containers, not bottled water containers, gallon jugs, gas cans, 5-liter bottles, cooking pots, anything that holds liquid without leaking. Because the moment taps stop running, the value of water spikes by 1,000%. But here's the twist: people panic faster about containers than about the water itself. Why? Because water, even dirty water, can be found. But if you have nothing to carry it in, you're stuck. Urban looters know this instinctively. They sweep shelves clean of buckets and storage jugs before anyone else even understands why. Meanwhile, the people who had bottled water sit there feeling clever, unaware that those bottles will all be empty in 3 days, and then they'll have nothing to collect rain or river water with. This section is based on practical field survival experience rather than formal academic sources. The second item looters rip out of stores is not what most people expect: cutting tools, knives, box cutters, scissors, multi-tools, anything sharp, simple, and useful. It's because when electricity dies, every small task gets harder without something that cuts. Rope, tarps, packaging, branches, cutting becomes daily life. And here's the wild part: knives essentially become currency. A cheap utility blade becomes more valuable than a gold chain because one helps you open stubborn food cans and cut fabric into bandages, and the other just makes you a target. Looters know this because they operate in chaos more often than the average person. They know that a dull knife is as dangerous as having no knife at all, and once the shelves are empty, people start ripping box cutters off hardware aisles like their treasure. SHTF level treasure. This section is based on practical field survival experience rather than formal academic sources. Then comes the third category, the one hardly anyone believes until they see it with their own eyes: batteries, small power banks, and anything that restores even a fraction of electricity. Nobody cares about giant generators; those are too loud and too heavy. People want the small power AA batteries, AAA batteries, little solar keychain chargers, tiny USB banks, because when the entire world goes dark, the ability to create even the weakest glow feels like magic. People don't admit how dependent they are on tiny lights until those lights become the only thing separating them from total sensory overload. Looters target these items immediately because they understand something most folks don't. Darkness drains morale faster than hunger. You can go 48 hours without eating and still think straight. Try 48 hours in a pitch black silence and your mind starts fraying like cheap rope. This section is based on practical field survival experience rather than formal academic sources. Now, the fourth item is one that surprises nearly everyone: hygiene supplies. Not glamorous, but looters clear entire shelves of soap, baby wipes, trash bags, feminine products, and bleach before most people even think about grabbing canned food. Sounds ridiculous, right? But it's actually perfectly logical. In a collapse, hygiene isn't a luxury. It's disease prevention, it's comfort, it's dignity, and it's bartering power. A pack of baby wipes becomes gold when there's no running water. A bar of soap becomes a survival tool when infections spread easily. Trash bags turn into makeshift toilets, rain covers, storage, insulation. And bleach becomes the closest thing you have to a water purification factory. Experienced looters or desperate people thinking clearly for the first time know that hygiene collapses fastest in disaster zones and sickness follows like a shadow. They also know that stores restock food eventually. They never restock running water. This section is based on practical field survival experience rather than formal academic sources. And then there's the fifth item, arguably the most important, the one people practically fight over: sturdy clothing and footwear. Not brand name outfits, not fashionable jackets. People go straight for boots, gloves, socks, and rugged workwear. The first thing that breaks during long upheavals isn't morale, it's feet. Backup footwear is a quiet form of power. Once streets fill with broken glass, debris, nails, ice, mud, whatever the disaster left behind, you realize how fragile your mobility is. The entire idea of survival rests on the assumption you can move, walk, climb, run, carry. People who lose their ability to move freely lose 80% of their survival capability within hours. Looters know this in a way most people don't. Shoes are everything. Socks are currency. Gloves prevent injuries that turn into infections. A pair of boots is worth more than a television because one helps you escape danger and the other helps you sit. This section is based on practical field survival experience rather than formal academic sources. But here's the hidden lesson beneath all this. Looters don't prioritize because they're chaotic. They prioritize because collapse reveals what actually matters. The collapse strips away illusions faster than it strips store shelves. What people grab first is what humans fear losing most: mobility, cleanliness, light, tools, containers, the foundations of functioning, moment-to-moment survival. And the uncomfortable truth is that many preppers spend thousands of dollars preparing for the wrong kind of disaster. They build arsenals but forget water jugs. They store freeze-dried meals but skip soap. They buy fancy gear but ignore socks like they grow on trees. Survival isn't built on spectacle, it's built on the boring, durable stuff that keeps you alive when everything else breaks. Here's the final twist. If you want to stay ahead of looters, don't copy what they take. Beat them to the mindset. Learn how to less light, not more gadgets. Learn how to maintain hygiene without running water. Learn how to travel on foot in the real world, not just on a treadmill. Because once you understand what people steal first, you also understand what you should have protected long before anyone else had thought to reach for it. And that knowledge, quiet, simple, unglamorous, is what makes the difference between being swept up in the panic or staying 5 steps ahead of it. You know what's even more revealing than what looters grab first? The items they walk right past without understanding the power in front of them? And honestly, this is where preparedness gets interesting, because the things people ignore during chaos are the same things that quietly decide who struggles and who adapts. Looters aren't stupid, they're just locked into short-term thinking. They grab what screams immediate relief, not what whispers long-term advantage. And that whisper is exactly what you should be listening for. The first overlooked item is something barely anyone values until it's too late. Manual can openers. Sounds absurd, right? But watch any real disaster footage and you'll see people clearing shelves of canned food, then realizing half of it is useless without a way to open it safely. Desperation makes people do stupid things, stabbing cans with knives, smashing them on concrete, slicing their hands open on jagged metal. In a collapse, one deep cut is not an injury, it's a threat to your entire survival timeline. A cheap manual can opener prevents infections, wasted food, and blood loss. Yet looters step right past them because they're boring, small, and not survival sexy. But the boring items, those are often the ones that quietly keep you alive. This section is based on practical field survival experience rather than formal academic sources. Next comes something even more underestimated. Tape, duct tape, electrical tape, packing tape, anything sticky, strong, and versatile. Looters grab glamorous tools and heavy gear while ignoring the single most adaptable repair material in the modern world. Tape is shelter reinforcement, tape is makeshift bandages, tape is gear repair, weapon stabilization, insulation, water container repair, splint creation, blister protection, basically the Swiss Army knife of the adhesive universe. During real emergencies, responders burn through tape faster than food. But looters, they leave it sitting on shelves like it's a craft supply. Their mistake, your advantage. This section is based on practical field survival experience rather than formal academic sources. Then there's charcoal, not the instant light kind, but plain old-fashioned charcoal. Looters don't even think about it because it doesn't have an obvious grab and survive now vibe. But survival logic isn't about instant results. Charcoal filters water, absorbs toxins, supports fire starting, preserves food, and makes improvised heating safer. In long power outages, it becomes one of the most valuable items you can store because it solves 2 problems at once: purification and fuel. The irony? People fight over bottled water while stepping over the thing that could help them clean hundreds of gallons more. This section is based on practical field survival experience rather than formal academic sources. Another criminally ignored category: maps, paper maps, local atlases, topographic charts, anything that shows land features without relying on a battery. Looters live in the GPS era. They assume they'll remember the route home, but when the grid collapses, communication dies with it, phones go dark, towers die, roads get blocked, and suddenly the city you thought you knew becomes a maze. The person holding the map becomes the navigator, the one with direction when everyone else is wandering blind. Preppers call maps force multipliers for a reason. Information is survival, yet looters leave them untouched, convinced they'll just figure it out. They usually don't. This section is based on practical field survival experience rather than formal academic sources. And then there's the big one, the item looters practically laugh at because they have no idea how powerful it is: notebooks and pens. Sounds ridiculous until you understand how fragile memory becomes during crisis. Stress drains cognition. Fatigue destroys short-term recall. People forget routes, plans, numbers, tasks, names, what supplies they've used, what they need to ration, even where they stored resources. A notebook turns chaos into structure. It becomes a mission log, a resource tracker, a map sketchbook, a communication system, a ration planner, a morale tool. In real field operations, writing things down is the difference between organized survival and wandering aimlessly through your own mistakes. Looters ignore notebooks because they're too focused on the noise of the moment to think about the clarity they'll need later. This section is based on practical field survival experience rather than formal academic sources. But the most important thing looters ignore isn't a physical item, it's the concept behind all of this: adaptability. Looters chase instant gratification. Survivors think in layers. A looter asks, what helps me right now? A survivor asks, what keeps me stable 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months from now? And that shift in thinking, that quiet recalibration of priorities, is what creates resilience. The overlooked items are not shiny, they don't scream for attention, but they form the infrastructure of a life that can withstand disruption. The real secret? You don't win a collapse by copying looters or by outgunning them. You win by outthinking them, by valuing the overlooked, by building redundancy, creativity, and calm into your planning. Looters grab the world's loudest solutions. Survivors build with the world's quietest ones. And the people who understand the difference are the ones who come out on the other side with more than just supplies. They come out with control.